I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Xiao to the centre, who's visiting us today, who I've known for quite some years now. She's been involved for about a decade, I think, in music information retrieval, and is now an assistant professor at the University of Hong Kong. She's going to talk to us today about cross-cultural music mood recognition, which is one of the subjects that comes out of that music information retrieval work and ISMIL generally, and all the technologies that go around there that the team here actually works with from the metadata side. So without further ado, Xiao, welcome.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure and honor to be here to present my work. For today, we are going to go through these several themes of my research. We are going through why music mood is important and why we need to look at it from a cross-cultural perspective. Then we will talk about a series of studies on music mood perception. So in short, it's just some perception of music mood by people in different cultural backgrounds. Then we will talk about some work on the computational side of music mood recognition, how we can use machine learning models to recognize music mood automatically and in different cultures. And finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mirax Grand Challenge on user experience. Mirax is the evaluation framework for music information retrieval, and in very recent years, we have this Grand Challenge on user experience. Basically, we'll talk about how we did that. Okay, why we care about music mood? In short, it's because the mood is arguably the main reason behind most people's engagement with music. And this is not from me, it's from music psychologists. And for me, as an information scientist, we actually look at how people search for music, and this work actually find that the effect or the emotion or the mood aspect of music has been used as a criteria for when people look for music and when people tag music. And in reality, quite a number of websites actually use mood to organize music. But music mood perception is highly subjective. Different people may have different opinions. And in music psychology, people have found the opinion on music mood will be influenced by the cultural background of the music and the listeners as well. But there wasn't any agreed conclusion on how and this cultural aspect would influence mood perception. So that's why we are setting out to look at this. And in particular, most of the existing studies are dominated by the Western perspective. That is, most studies are on Western music, most studies are on Western listeners. But on the other hand, as we know, more and more music is distributed globally nowadays, and they are appreciated by listeners around the world. And a very brilliant example is this. So I guess all of you are familiar with this music, right? And it was one of the top viewed YouTube video in the world. And that signals us, well, music is really global nowadays. And then as music information retrieval researchers, we need to think about how we can build up maybe a global MIR system. So based on this, we come up with some research on cross-cultural music mood perception. So particularly, we have a set of music, and then we ask people from different cultural background to listen to the music and let us know how they feel about it, and then we do the comparison. So the research question is like this. How differently or similarly do people from different cultural background, perceive the mood of music? And if they are different, then would the difference be influenced by the characteristics of the songs, like their genre style, or whether they have vocal or instrumental songs? Okay, and particularly we look at the Western music and also Chinese music, and it's interesting to contrast. The basic research design is quite straightforward. It's online survey. So we prepare a set of music clips, either from Western music or from Chinese music. And we carefully select them so that it's balanced on different characteristics. In order to make the survey finishable within a reasonable period of time, we had to limit the number of clips and also the length of clips. I think that's one of the limitations for this kind of study. And I would be open to your suggestions, like how we can scale it up. Okay, then for the listener side, we have multiple different listener groups, basically from different cultural background. So as myself is not an expert in music, but for the users, we carefully choose them, and particularly we define their cultural background as where they grow up. So instead of their nationality or their self-identification of their cultural background, so we just ask, where did you grow up? Then for the future studies, for the Western music study, we ask American listeners, those raised up in the US, and also listeners who were raised up in the mainland China, and also we have a group from South Korea. When we studied the Chinese music, we had two groups. One group was from Hong Kong. Another group, again, is from the United States. Admittedly, all this group of listeners were limited to our network. So, I mean, the authors' networks. And the task is very simple. We ask them to listen to the music and then choose the labels. And where the labels are from, so this is the screenshots of the survey. The labels is here, and they are from the Mirax audio mood classification task. So it's really an area that there's no agreement, like what kind of mood categories are out there, particularly for music. So then we turned into Mirax because it has been used in the community and has been recognized among the community. And there were 5 different mood clusters, and they were derived from a major music website called allmusic.com. But we also add another one, it's called Other, because we want to give the listeners an option to actually write their own opinions. And later on, we actually analyze their own opinions, and there are some interesting things. To make it more easier for the listeners, we did the translation for the Chinese group, for the Korean group. And admittedly, the translation is very hard, and there's no way to 100% be accurate in terms of translation. But we actually consulted multiple persons and tried to make it as accurately as possible. This is the result for the Western pop music study. This is the general mood judgment from the 3 groups of people. And what we did is to test their distribution, to compare them and see if there are differences like statistically, and we use the chi-square test, and the distribution is in general different. But more interestingly, we actually calculate the distance between the three groups, and we found that the Korean group is in the middle of the other two. So the Korean group has a smaller distance with the other two groups, while the American group and the Chinese group, they have a larger difference. Okay, so this is very interesting because the Korean cultural kind of has been influenced by both Chinese cultural and the American cultural. Okay. Another thing I wanted to point out is the other. As we see, the American listeners actually chose a lot more others than the Eastern counterparts. This may indicate the individualism and the collectivism difference between those Eastern Western culture. Here is some analysis on the song characteristics. The first two columns list the instrumental sounds and the vocal sounds. As we can see, for the first row, which is American listeners, we see the numbers are very different. Let me explain what the numbers are. They are called agreement ratio, which is defined as the ratio between the agreed mood judgment and the total number of mood judgment, so that we can see how well the listeners agreed with each other. When it says American, that means that both judgments are coming from the American group. When it says Chinese, that's the same, both judgments coming from Chinese, so it's within group comparison. But the last row is called American and Chinese. That means cross-cultural agreement, so each from one side. Okay, then we can see that for American listeners, the vocal actually very, very helpful because they reached a higher agreement on the vocal sounds. But for Chinese listeners, it doesn't show an effect. And another thing that's worth looking at here is for the pop music. So here we have several general genres. So we have dance music, easy listening, pop, and rock. Although in general it's Western pop music, and we can still differentiate them in terms of genre. And the American listeners did pretty well on the pop music, but the Chinese listeners did well in the easy listening. So the pop music presumably were familiar for the American listeners, but for the Chinese listeners, they are not that familiar with these sounds. Later on, we will see an example. And but why Chinese listeners did well on the easy listening music, we can just make some hypotheses here. Because the easy listening music are mostly instrumental, and also we can see the Chinese in the instrumental songs, the Chinese did well, or did better than the Americans. So if we think that the easy listening music is mostly instrumental and usually in certain mood. Here so please let me hide something here. So certain, actually I know the Chinese listeners actually did something very well with certain kind of mood. Later on we will talk about. So that might be the reason why a Chinese listener did well for the easy listening. Another thing to point out is for the cross-cultural agreement, it's all, for all of this music, it's lower than within cultural. Yeah. So we see that there is some difficult to reach agreement between cultural. Okay, so here is the song with the least agreement cross-culturally. That means the Americans and the Chinese actually think very differently for this song. So let me play with it. So from the title, I think you guys are familiar with it, right? So. Oh, sorry. Oh, I just want to stop it. Okay. Okay. Oh. Anyway, okay. So I actually feel very much lucky today that finally have the chance to play this song in the home country of the artist. Yeah. So it's amazing that this song was listed agreed because so let's look at why. So we actually asked the listeners to tell us how they are familiar with each of the song, but we didn't ask them how you are familiar with it because people define familiarity differently. So instead, we asked them two questions. One, have you heard this song before? Two, can you name the artist or the song? So if they have heard it, then that's kind of familiar. If they can name the artist or the song, that's very familiar. So that's the statistic for American listeners. 29 out of 31 actually are familiar with this song. But for Chinese, it's 0. So we hypothesis that the American listeners, they are familiar with the artist and the song. They kind of have a social agreed impression that how this song should, what kind of mood this song should express. But for Korean and Chinese, they don't have this pre-knowledge. That's why their answers are spread around. Okay, so that's. Okay, let's switch gear to listen to some Chinese music. So this one is another study which used Chinese music. And particularly, we selected six styles of Chinese music. And this graph actually shows how the listeners' answers composed of. And so the first one, the left one, is called instrumental folk music. And the second one is Cantonese folk, and so on. So we actually got these different genres from the literature, so the Chinese music literature. So I just play a little bit for you guys to have a flavor what it is. So the instrumental folk music is very traditional Chinese music, and it's played by the traditional Chinese instrument. Okay, so you can kind of have the flavor. This is, the second one is this. Oh. So this one I'm going to play is called the Cantonese folk song. It's like this.
When these have all gone, you can get it with that second button. Yeah, give me a second.
Yeah, okay. So this Cantonese folk song is also using the traditional Chinese instrument, but it's in a very different flavor because the Cantonese province is in the south part of China, and it has very different geographic and climate than the northern part. So that's probably why the flavor is very different. The third one is called contemporary Chinese instrumental music. It's still use the traditional Chinese instrument, but with a very contemporary, like modern flavor. It's because it also incorporated the Western pop music, some elements of the Western pop music, like the percussion and so on. So this is an example. This is erhu, and this one is the zhen, and also flute. So all this Chinese traditional music, but you see you listen to the percussion part is very from the Western. And another one is Cantonese pop music. It's like this. The lyrics is sung in Cantonese. So you see that this is very much like Western pop music, just the vocal part is Cantonese. And the fifth kind is called the China Wind. It's actually very modern. It's just gets popularity in the last 5 years. But I think it has quite a lot of Chinese traditional components in it, but you can hear the Western influence as well. Can you hear its Chinese flavor? Okay, the last one is called Chinese rock, which is arguably the only native Chinese pop music. It doesn't actually, it didn't grow up from the Western influence. Instead, it was developed from the northwestern China, a kind of music style in the northwestern of China, as you can hear. Yeah. Okay, so it's rock and it's expressed kind of like angry kinds of feeling as we know, but this style has its political roots because in the 80s people wanted to express their different feelings about the government and things like that. Okay, so that's the 6 different styles, and now you have a kind of flavor of it. And some of the results actually says, it's listed here. First of all, people feel differently. From the different culture, they feel differently. And the first 3 styles, they are instrumental, and they got a lot of mixed responses. But the later 3, they are vocal. They have the vocal part, and then they have some dominant choices. And the most agreed genre cross-culturally is the Canton pop, probably because it's a direct mix of Western and the Cantonese. And the least agreed genre is the contemporary instrumental. So it's using the Chinese traditional instrument, but using the Western percussion and other elements. So this is the result. Okay, another result is the other option. We analyze the other option like manually, and then there are some interesting findings. First of all, people supply new mood terms, and most of the terms, so for both cultural group, most of the terms are calm, relaxing, and longing. Okay, so that indicates that maybe for Chinese music, this kind of mood are important. And also, let's recall just now that Chinese people tend to agree on instrumental and easy listening music, and those are calm and relaxing. So, yeah, the Chinese listeners maybe just get used to those kind of music, or they just like those kind of music. Another thing that's very interesting is the American listeners, only the American listeners, they even use some description of scenes to describe the mood. So that gives us a hint that maybe we need to analyze the, how to say that, the transferability between senses. Okay, and again, the American listener supplies terms that from different clusters, and they use terms, part of the terms in a cluster, but none of the Hong Kong listeners did that. So this gives us some hints that maybe when we design global music information retrieval systems, we need to look at the cultural background of the users, and then we supply different kinds of metadata values for them. Okay, this is a comparison between vocal and instrumental. This one, I just wanted to point out that, as you can see for the Chinese music, having vocal component in the song actually improved the agreement in within American group as well. So we suspect that it's because for Chinese music, the vocal expression is so strong that even people who doesn't understand the lyrics, who are not familiar with the songs at all, would feel this emotional expression in those vocal parts. And this brought up some deeper questions in music study. So where the music emotion come from? It's from the lyrics part or the melody part. So far, our studies and in the literature just told us both would be important, and it's a combination of both. But some studies actually says lyrics is more dominant. Melodies is more dominant, and lyrics can strengthen some emotion response with the negative and low arousal emotions. So then for Chinese music, many of the Chinese songs are actually in the low arousal part, as you have heard. So we think that this might be the reason that the vocal Chinese music actually helped. Now let's play this one and see. Okay, let me have a quick poll. So for these 5 different categories, which categories do you think this song would be? 3, right? So even within us, we're pretty consistent, and you guys didn't understand the lyrics, right? So in fact, this song is the most agreed song, and in both group. So for whether you listen, you understand the lyrics or not, you agree. And so for our data, I think in the American group, it's 99% of them agreed on C3, and for the Hong Kong group, it's 100%. So that means this. So the Chinese music are very kind of typical, and they express this kind of feelings. Okay, so the findings and implications, I summarized this here. So different cultural groups indeed have different mood judgment. So that means for MIR systems, we maybe need to differentiate the users. And lyrics seem to help increase the agreement among listeners. So that gives us some implication that when we do automatic classification on mood, we need to consider lyrics. And music in different style had different agreement levels that indicate we need to differentiate the music style when we recommend music by mood. So for some style, we have higher confidence to recommend, but for some styles, we may give the user more recommendation and so on. And finally, some music traits indeed can transcend the cultural boundaries, like bittersweet for Chinese music. Okay, I'm going to briefly talk about the automatic prediction on a music mood. This one is a computational work, and it's not so presentation-wise, it may not be as interesting as the last part. Just to let you know, it's what's interesting here is we try to find out when we train the models using one set of music, can it be applied to another set of music? And if it can, then why? And what kind of factors would affect this applicability? So that's this series of work. Before we do that, we have to say that in music mood, there are two kinds of representation. One is categorical, so you just like our previous work, that's 5 categories, which one you choose. And the other is called dimensional. So the dimensional one is to use the numerical data to represent the mood. Particularly, the most popular one is the valence and arousal model. So that is to use 2 numbers to indicate the mood of a song. One number indicates valence, which is the level of pleasant, and the other dimension is arousal, which is the level of energy. Okay, so we actually have done work for both of the models. Then the research question is what kind of audio feature that's commonly used in music recognition of Western songs can be applicable to Chinese songs. And also the next one is how about the prediction models? Okay, whether it's applicable. Then to answer this question, our idea basically is this. So we prepared 2 data sets, one in English pop songs, one in Chinese pop songs. And then use those, we extract the audio features that's actually created for Western music. Before we did this work, we actually didn't know whether those features would be applicable to Chinese pop music. So we just tried it. And this is the list of audio features. So it's from energy to rhythms to the timbre. And the last part, called the sight sound, is basically timbre music, but it's incorporated the psychoacoustic characteristics of the human ear. So, and the result, let me generalize it, is basically the result shows this is for the evaluation of the features. It shows on all the features worked to some extent, but the timbre features are the best. And pitch, and the last one is very interesting. Pitch features and tonality features work well with Chinese songs. So that means the Chinese pop songs have similar pitch and tonality characteristics as the English songs. So this may not be surprising because the Chinese pop music had a lot of influence from the Western pop music. Yeah, but we are glad that we kind of verify it using the empirical data. This is also for the numerical prediction, and it's not surprising that the valence prediction is very hard. In the literature, it's just like 30%. It's gold, but arousal is much better. So think that the computer is not that intelligent yet to be able to tell whether something is pleasant or not pleasant. But for the music, the energy level of the music, it's more predictable. Yeah. Okay. So this one is to see the prediction cross-cultural, cross-data set prediction. And the result basically shows, well, cross-cultural, cross-data set prediction has lower precision, but in general, it's still acceptable. It's like 60%, 63%. This is about the state of the art for mood, because mood is very hard to predict automatically. Here, but one thing I need to point it out is here for this prediction, its classification, actually it's training on English songs and testing on Chinese songs works better than the other way around. But here, when we do the numerical regression, it's different. So the best performance was when we train on the Chinese data sets and test on the English data set, it's actually better. So because of this, we want, and for this one, the cross-cultural prediction performance is the same as within cultural prediction. So it didn't, so we would assume that within data set, the prediction would be better. But this one actually shows no difference. So actually, on the one hand, we are glad that our experiment worked. But on the other hand, we cannot help to wonder what kind of factors can affect those cross-cultural prediction. So then we did another study which explored these questions. So whose cultural background are we talking about? It's the music cultural background or the listener's cultural background. So we actually, this time for this is a very recent study, we actually have 3 data sets with English songs annotated by English, like Western people, and then Chinese songs annotated by Chinese people, and English songs annotated by Chinese people. And which features? So here we actually plot the best performing feature called sight sound, and the Chinese and the English songs actually have similar distribution. That's probably why it worked pretty well. And we suspect the size of the data set actually had influence. So we did a series of evaluation on controlling the training data set, the size of the training data set, and also the data set of the testing data. And finally, we evaluate the reliability of annotations, because different data sets, they may use different way to annotate, and they may use crowdsourcing, they may use expert, they may just use students. All those can give us different reliability levels of the annotation. So this study is just published in here, so if you are interested, you can refer to it. Basically, this is one of the results. See, we built in the different subsets with different alpha level. Krippendorf alpha was used to measure the reliability of the data set. And we found that if your reliability is higher, then this one has higher prediction. But when your reliability is lower than certain level, it all collapses. But so this is the arousal prediction. For valence prediction, it's a little bit different. Yeah, but that's the idea. So we evaluate all this. Okay, so now let's switch a little bit to the grand challenge. So this is particularly interesting because nowadays we want to measure the user's experience with MIR systems. We are glad that right now MIR technology has been matured to a certain extent that we can build the complete MIR system. And then the idea is to, for the first time in history, to evaluate a complete MIR system. Before this work, we always evaluate a certain technique, like for classification, how much is your accuracy? But whether your accuracy of 65% versus 75% would make any difference to the user. So that's the idea here. So it's called grand challenge because it's very first time in history. The goal is to evaluate user experience in contacting with complete and user-facing music information retrieval system. For that goal, we actually organized a very big music collection, like 10,000 songs. and all the tracks have some metadata, okay? And the idea is we are organizing this task and post it, and then we solicit the participants around the world who are going to develop the complete systems. And then for this purpose, we have to design a use case so that people would know what they are going to design, what kind of system they are going to build. So, but it's very tricky to come up with this kind of use case. So here are the considerations. First of all, the task needs to be common and realistic. Second, the task needs to be specific enough so that the evaluators can judge how successful the systems are. And we need to design a task that's not tied to a particular MIR techniques, because we care about the user experience instead of the MIR techniques. And finally, a task that can be reasonably accomplished with the given data set. Remember, our data set is actually from non-commercial data music, because we cannot distribute commercial music to anyone. So those are free music and licensed by Creative Commons. But as a result, those music are not familiar with most of the people. So here we come up with the use task. Is suppose you are creating a short video about occasion, and you need to find some copyright-free songs to use as a background music. So we hope that this task follows all the considerations. And then we need to design a set of evaluation criteria so that when the participating systems are ready, then we can ask evaluators to interact with the systems and then give their scores on those criteria so that those systems can be evaluated. Because of that reason, we actually have some considerations on the criteria. First, should be minimally intrusive. That means we cannot design a lot of criteria. It has to be minimal. And at the same time, it has to be comprehensive, because we are measuring user experience, and we are not measuring any part of the user experience, but the entire thing. And finally, it should be grounded in the literature of related area. Here we identify human-computer interaction and user experience, those area. And finally, we come up with this list of criteria. The first one is the general overall criteria. It's called overall satisfaction. Then the four of them are different aspects of the system, and we hope that those aspect covers most part of the user experience. So learnability, robustness, affordance, and feedback. So here are some definitions. I'll just skip them. This is the evaluation platform. So the evaluators are just any adult who are 18 years old or older. And this is our evaluation system. It has two parts. One is the embedded interface that have the participating system embedded in our interface, and the other part is the evaluation form. So in this case, what we get from the participating systems is only the URL of their system, and they actually use. However they build their system, we don't care. We just need a URL of the system that can be fully functional. Then evaluators can interact with them through our embedded interface. So here is how it looks like. So this part is the embedded frame. And what's showing here is a prototype something. It's one of the systems. And the other side is the evaluation form. Actually, this captures the interface in motion. That means the interface now is just moving in the middle of moving. That, in fact, when the user are interacting with the system, the user only look at this embedded frame, and after interacting, the user can click on that bar, then that brings the forms back to the screen. So this is the form, so our criteria, and also some open text comments. So we hope that this way we can minimize the cognitive load of the users so that they can seamlessly interact with the system while still give us the scores. And the participatory system, the first one is thank you for the music, short names thank you. So it's actually built on Greenstone, so you guys looking familiar, right? So it's only based on the metadata of the songs, and it can only support a search by title, artist, albums, and so on. So search by the metadata. So it's very basic. This one is called Moody. It can search by mood and genre, and or combination of it. This one is called Tonic. It supports the search by tag, and all the bubbles are the tags. And you can click on one or more of the bubbles, and then the songs with those tags will be listed here. So it's quite fancy. And this is our results. So wanted to point out that the only criteria that had made difference between, the systems had difference is the overall satisfaction. And for the other criteria, no significant difference. And we also, so the last column is the correlation with overall satisfaction, because we wanted to know what criteria is important for satisfaction. And affordance rated pretty high. Affordance is defined as the functional, the functions of the system, whether the system can support the user to do whatever they want to do. So, okay. Then we did analysis on the open-ended text. So we did manual coding and categorize those comments into different area and see how often those different areas were mentioned in those comments. And here is the results. So the numbers is how many times they were mentioned. And the plus and minus means positive or negative. So if we want to see how often they are mentioned, it's just a summation of the positive and negative, and it's ranked in this way. So we can see that affordance are mentioned a lot, followed by learnability and so on. And finally, what we wanted to point out that aesthetics turns out to be very important. So the users just like the looking of the systems. So here is a summary of what we found from those grand challenge. First, the functionality is crucial for user satisfaction. And aesthetics is very important. Also, learnability is also important. The users want the system to be intuitive and easy to learn. So which suggests our designers better to conduct usability testing before releasing any systems to the users. And also a lot of mentioning on music collections. So our music collection is sufficiently large, but the music is not diverse enough. So that's why in the second year, we changed the collection, make it more diverse. And also people wanted to have familiar music, which we don't know how to help them because familiar music is expensive and it's not distributable. Yeah. Okay, so implications for MIR evaluation is like this. We considered new criteria, aesthetics, performance, and utility. And also the robustness criteria that was used in the first round was removed because it wasn't, people didn't comment on that, and it didn't correlate very well to the overall satisfaction. Yeah, and a better data set, and also we need more user tasks because people were complaining that the task is just inflexible, and for all the systems, they may be specific to a kind of task, like Spotify is good for this, and Pandora is good for something else. Okay, so based on this summary, we have another round of the grand challenge that is here. So this is a little advertisement that we need evaluators. So it's already there, and also this year we have 3 systems out there and waiting for evaluation, but we really need people to come and play with them and give us your opinions. Okay. A final thing, which I think is interesting, for MII evaluation, we found something that's really puzzling. So one thing is presentation versus functionality. One user actually says this: I really like the physical nature of the other 2 interface. I don't necessarily think this interface performs any less well, but I really like the graphic nature of the other 2 systems. So that means whether presentation or functionality, which one is more important? And also, some of our evaluators complain that where is the MIR here? I think it works only with the manually annotated text in the song. So yeah, what is MIR? Does it have to be audio engineering or something? Yeah, so this is something we can think about. Okay, so that concludes today's seminar, and thank you very much for your patience. Thanks.